It's now legal, it's now regulated. Some of you know that in my capacity as state treasurer, I've been pushing very hard at the federal level for clarity on the banking rules with the U.S. Treasury. As you know, the U.S. Treasury issued so-called guidance that was supposed to help commercial banks better meet the needs of what as I say, is a legal and regulated industry in a number of states. And in turn, what happened was when the Treasury issued their guidance, it created more confusion and caused a number of banks to actually pull away from their marijuana banking relationships. The concern on the part of banks, of course, is they are regulated by a number of federal agencies, and they also have federal banking charters that are at risk if they do anything in opposition to what the Treasury sets as guidance. Long story short, the guidance basically put banks in the position of regulating individual marijuana clients to ensure that product wasn't sold to minors or shipped across state lines. Those are very onerous burdens that are not put on other legal and regulated industries. And so regretfully, commercial banks started to back away. I'm very concerned about that issue as treasurer. I think it creates a public safety issue, number one. I don't like the idea of people having to deal in large volumes of cash. And number two, from the industry perspective, it increases your costs in a number of ways and increases the hassle factor. And if more and more states are going to be put into a position where it is a legal and regulated industry, we need to be able to regulate. And you can't regulate an all-cash business as easily as you can a bankable industry. So it's a win-win for everybody to have it be bankable. But that's a very narrow sliver of the issues that you're experiencing as a nascent and rapidly growing industry. And I wanted to better inform myself on the totality, the bigger picture, what it means on the streets, what it means at the industry level, and how I could be of most help if I am elected mayor of Portland. If the federal government cannot clarify through the U.S. Treasury banking rules that make it feasible for the banking industry to commercially bank your industry, it's not going to happen. Right. So then the question becomes, are there other options? I've been toying with a group of people who I would describe as interested parties here in the state of Oregon who are looking for creative alternative solutions in lieu of the federal government taking action in the near term. We all assume that the federal government will eventually take strong actions. Our delegation, by the way, has been way out on the pointy edge of this. Congressman Blumenauer has long been a strong proponent of this. They are absolutely all over the U.S. Treasury on this and making their interests very clearly known. So I'm super appreciative of that. Your presence here today is just emblematic of that commitment. There are other models that, in my mind, have merit, and some have been tried elsewhere with minimal success. The co-op model, for example, to me is really appealing. It was tried at a smaller scale in Colorado and ultimately didn't work for a number of reasons, but I don't think I would discount that as a possibility. If you create a co-op between users who are actually pooling their own resources, accounting for their own resources, and effectively replicating a banking organization, and they are not doing demand deposits for the public at large, and are creating their own safety and accounting mechanisms, and they are still accountable to the government regulators. If you can figure out a model to make that happen, I think that's one possibility. If I weren't running for public office, that's an area where I would be actively exploring a possibility, because frankly, this is going to be a large industry, and banking happens to be a lucrative business. And if the federal government isn't letting commercial banks that have federal charters into the business, that's what's called a vacuum. And I'd rather you as an industry fill the vacuum than let, and I'll just put this in heavy air quotes, someone else fill that vacuum for you. And I'll let you fill in that blank yourself as to who that might be. So I'd like to see the industry take a proactive step like a co-op or another shareholder opportunity. I would want you to continue to work closely with your federal partners on this, though, because what I don't want to see happen is have you know, 5 years from now have 10 different states with 10 different models, which will frankly make things even harder for the federal government to take decisive and federal action. So I do believe there are opportunities, far be it for me as a banking regulator and a state treasurer to say you should in any way circumvent federal banking rules. That's not my point. My point is simply you've got a legal industry. We've all agreed it's going to be a regulated industry, and therefore, in my opinion, you are entitled to a banking relationship that allows us to safely transport and manage a business that otherwise is going to be a large volume cash business. And we have a right to be able to see the books, to be able to regulate the industry the way we promised the voters when they agreed to legalize the industry here in the state of Oregon.